What if the true power brokers in our world are not whom you have always assumed? Imagine for a moment that the world's chessboard is being upended not by those in the spotlight, but by players who move quietly, patiently, and with long memories. Today, a slow-motion earthquake is shifting the very bedrock of global politics. While news headlines churn out familiar tales of conflict and cooperation, there is a deeper, hidden current, quietly redrawing the map of power before our eyes. Consider the events unfolding this week. Russia, China, and Azerbaijan, three nations with vastly different histories and ambitions, have each executed moves that are shattering old assumptions and forging new realities. Russia, responding with unprecedented force to provocative Belgian rhetoric, has demonstrated that its intentions reach far beyond mere words. China, engaged in high-stakes negotiations with the United States, has exposed the fragile nature of alliances that once seemed unbreakable. Meanwhile, Azerbaijan is steadily distancing itself from Western influence, an act that could transform the strategic balance across the entire Caucasus region. In Moscow, persistent rumors swirl of imminent leadership changes, stories that, if true, could redefine the future for one of the world's most formidable powers. The uncertainty is palpable, sending shockwaves through diplomatic circles, financial markets, and even the daily routines of ordinary citizens. History teaches us that ignoring such pivotal shifts comes at a steep price. Consider the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989. For years, the signs were there. Protests, economic stagnation, subtle changes in Soviet rhetoric. But most of the world's leaders underestimated the speed and totality of what was coming. Within months, the geopolitical landscape of Europe was utterly transformed. Those who failed to adapt were left disoriented and, in many cases, powerless. The changes we are witnessing today are just as profound, even if they are less visible. They will reshape not only your economic prospects and sense of security, but also the very opportunities you once took for granted. The game is changing, not just the players, but the rules themselves. Only those who are vigilant, who study the nuances, will be prepared to seize the opportunities and avoid the dangers that lie ahead. Let us peel back the layers, one by one, and trace the emerging pattern that is shaping our world in real time. First, we turn to Moscow, a city that has, time and again, served as the epicenter of global change. This week, 4 major flashpoints have set the stage for a global reset that is impossible to ignore. Let us start with Belgium. The Belgian defense minister, in a move that blindsided even seasoned diplomats, issued a direct threat against Moscow. He declared that his country could erase the Russian capital from the map, a level of escalation unprecedented in recent European history. Russia's reaction was immediate and forceful. Within hours, the Kremlin responded with a fierce official statement, denouncing the Belgian threat as reckless and inflammatory. To underscore its seriousness, Russia revealed its latest military technology, a nuclear-powered underwater drone, a weapon designed not merely for deterrence, but for strategic advantage. This was more than posturing. It was a clear signal that the Kremlin will not be cowed by Western rhetoric. Belgium and its allies scrambled to contain the fallout. Government officials hastily issued clarifications, insisting that the minister's words had been misinterpreted or taken out of context. But as history has often shown, think of the Sarajevo assassination in 1914, which triggered World War I. Words can take on a life of their own, setting off a chain of events that no one can fully control. This episode is far from isolated. For years, Western leaders have relied on strong words as a form of deterrence, believing that they can always walk back from the brink. But the global context is changing. Russia and other Eastern powers are responding not just with rhetoric, but with tangible demonstrations of force and technological prowess. The old strategies, where words could be retracted without real consequences, are losing their power. These tensions are exposing growing fissures within the Western alliance. With each escalation, Europe's credibility is questioned, and the very notion of deterrence begins to unravel. This instability is not just a matter for diplomats and generals. It seeps into the lives of ordinary people, raising the specter of renewed conflict and undermining the foundations of international safety and stability. As Europe's leaders grapple with these public confrontations, a quieter but equally significant transformation is unfolding in Asia. Behind closed doors, far from the media's glare, the balance of power between the world's leading superpowers is shifting. Consider the recent summit in the South Korean port city of Busan. President Donald Trump arrived with much fanfare, promising breakthroughs on trade, security, and regional cooperation. But after just 2 hours of private talks with China's President Xi Jinping, the world witnessed an uncomfortable silence. No joint statements, no tangible progress, only forced smiles and vague assurances. This was not merely a failed photo opportunity. In reality, President Xi emerged from the summit with concrete gains: new trade concessions, security guarantees, and a strengthened regional influence. The United States, once the undisputed architect of global rules, found itself making concessions in exchange for little more than ambiguous promises. Analysts around the globe quickly recognized what had happened. The summit was a diplomatic setback for Washington, and a clear sign that the global balance of power is shifting eastward. To grasp the significance, look back to the 1972 Nixon-Mao summit. That meeting reshaped the world by opening ties between the United States and China, setting the stage for decades of economic boom and strategic competition. Today's summit, by contrast, signals a reversal. China is now in the driver's seat, setting terms and dictating outcomes. Meanwhile, in the South Caucasus, another kind of crisis is erupting. Azerbaijan's government abruptly shut down the BBC's office in Baku, sending shockwaves through Western media circles. This was not merely a bureaucratic decision. It was a bold declaration that Western norms and values are no longer the standard. Azerbaijan is asserting its sovereignty, making it clear that approval from Europe or the United States is no longer a priority. The message became even more explicit when Azerbaijan's delegation stormed out of a European Union Parliamentary Assembly. Their rationale? National sovereignty would not be compromised for the sake of external criticism. Instead, Azerbaijan is forging new alliances with Russia, with Turkey, and with other rising powers, recalibrating its diplomatic and strategic posture to better serve its own interests. These flashpoints, scattered across continents, all point to a single, inescapable reality. The old world order, dominated by Western influence, is fracturing. For much of the 20th century, the so-called rules-based order, crafted by the victors of World War II and reinforced by institutions like the United Nations and NATO, dictated the terms of trade, security, and diplomacy. Today, that system is being openly challenged, dismantled, and replaced by a new, multipolar order. The implications are immediate and profound. The global system that once guaranteed stability, prosperity, and predictability is eroding. In its place is a world where power is more diffuse, alliances are more fluid, and the rules are up for negotiation. This does not just affect policymakers and CEOs. It touches every aspect of daily life, from the price of gasoline to the safety of your investments and the security of your community. Amid this upheaval, uncertainty is the only constant. With traditional power structures in flux, even those at the top find themselves navigating uncharted waters. New alliances are being forged, sometimes in secret, sometimes in plain sight, and the outcomes are anything but certain. Let's look closer at the shifting power dynamics in Moscow. Just as the world is digesting these international crises, rumors of a major shakeup at Russia's Ministry of Defense begin to circulate. The name on everyone's lips is Alexei Dyumin, a crisis-tested strategist whose resume reads like a thriller. Dyumin masterminded the annexation of Crimea in 2014, a move that shocked the world and redrew the borders of Europe. He has led daring rescue operations, managed high-profile security crises, and earned a reputation for cool, ruthless efficiency. To Russia's elite, Dyumin represents both continuity and the potential for dramatic policy shifts. Why does this matter? Because leadership changes at the top of a major power like Russia can have instant, far-reaching consequences. When Mikhail Gorbachev rose to power in 1985, few predicted the chain of reforms, perestroika and glasnost, that would unravel the Soviet Union within 6 years. A new leader can mean new priorities, new alliances, and new risks. Energy markets can swing, trade routes can be redrawn, and global investment climates can shift overnight. For anyone with a stake in international politics, or simply trying to make sense of where to invest or how to plan for the future, these undercurrents are impossible to ignore. On the global stage, the old rules are breaking down. Western influence is no longer unchallenged. It is being tested not only by headlines and military posturing, but by new operators who blend technical mastery with strategic vision. Diumin is emblematic of this new breed. Leaders who are comfortable in both the shadows and the spotlight, adept at leveraging state-of-the-art technology, and unafraid to defy tradition. Meanwhile, Azerbaijan is building alternative partnerships. China is leveraging economic and diplomatic might, and the certainties that have defined the world order for decades are dissolving before our eyes. So where should your attention go now, amid all this flux? The answer lies in seeking out opportunities and recognizing dangers in places that were overlooked or undervalued under the old system. Sectors like energy and security will always matter, but do not underestimate the potential in technology, logistics, and even tourism as new power blocks reshape trade and travel routes. For example, when the Soviet Union collapsed, nations like Kazakhstan and Georgia suddenly became crucial nodes for oil and gas pipelines that bypassed Russia, opening up new markets and strategic opportunities. Today, a similar process is underway, as countries realign their allegiances and open new channels for commerce and influence. At the same time, be alert to emerging risks. As alliances shift and old regulatory frameworks fall away, gaps in oversight and security can create vulnerabilities, from cyber attacks to financial instability. Recall the Asian financial crisis of 1997. As global investors rushed into newly liberalized markets, few anticipated the speed with which contagion could spread when confidence faltered. The lesson is clear. Move with caution, diversify your interests, and always keep an eye on the broader geopolitical landscape. To ignore these shifts is to gamble with your future. Understanding the motives, the moves, and the new alliances can help you spot opportunities early, mitigate risks before they explode, and position yourself for success in a world that is changing faster than ever before. The next act of global politics is already underway, and those who stand still, clinging to outdated assumptions, will find themselves left behind or exposed when the ground moves beneath them. What does all of this mean for you? And how can you prepare for what comes next? First, cultivate a habit of reading between the lines. Do not accept headlines at face value. Look for the patterns that connect seemingly unrelated events. For instance, if you notice that countries are expelling Western media outlets, as Azerbaijan has done, ask yourself what that signals about the future of press freedom, information flow, and diplomatic relations. When you see new technologies unveiled, like Russia's nuclear-powered underwater drone, consider the implications not only for military balance, but for industries like energy, shipping, and insurance. Second, study historical parallels. The current wave of realignment is not unprecedented. In the aftermath of World War II, the Marshall Plan redrew the economic map of Europe, binding the West together in a dense web of trade and security agreements. When those ties began to fray in the 1970s, amid oil shocks, stagflation, and the rise of new economic powers, savvy observers who saw the writing on the wall were able to adapt early, shifting their investments and strategies to match the new reality. Third, focus on adaptability. This is not the time for rigid plans or one-size-fits-all solutions. Instead, cultivate agility in your thinking, your investments, and your personal networks. That might mean developing new skills, exploring alternative career paths, or building relationships with people in emerging markets and industries. The more adaptable you are, the better positioned you will be to seize opportunities and weather storms as they arise. Fourth, do not underestimate the importance of information. In an era of information warfare, propaganda, and deepfakes, the ability to discern truth from fiction is more valuable than ever. Invest in reliable sources, engage with multiple perspectives, and be willing to change your mind as new facts emerge. Remember how, during the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962, miscommunication and misinformation nearly led to nuclear war. Only cool heads and clear information prevented disaster. Finally, stay engaged. The future is not something that happens to you. It is something you help create. By staying informed, sharing insights, and participating in public debates, you can help shape the conversation and influence the direction of change. Your voice matters, especially in times of uncertainty. So, as the world enters this new era of flux and realignment, ask yourself, are you prepared for the new global game? The events we have explored today are not isolated incidents. They are part of an unfolding narrative that is reshaping the entire system of international relations, economics, and security. If you connect the dots, from Russia's unwavering response to Belgian threats, to China's quiet but decisive wins in diplomatic negotiations, to Azerbaijan's calculated pivot away from Western influence, a startling new pattern emerges. The old rulebook is being torn up. New players, new alliances, and new strategies are rewriting the script at a pace that few can follow. Clinging to yesterday's beliefs and comfort zones means risking a dangerous misreading of the signals that shape everything from your career to the safety of your neighborhood. Power, once concentrated in a handful of familiar capitals, is shifting, sometimes in secret, sometimes in bold daylight, to those who thrive in uncertainty and are prepared to act decisively. The language, the technology, the alliances, all are evolving, and at a speed that can leave even the most attentive observer breathless. This is not just a matter for governments, generals, or CEOs. It affects the flow of money, the strategies of companies, the allocation of resources, and the setting of rules that impact everyone. The stakes are deeply personal. Your job, your safety, your opportunities, and even your sense of what is possible are all in play. So, before you scroll past today's headlines or dismiss them as background noise, ask yourself, are you watching the real game unfold? Or are you being swept up in the spectacle, missing the deeper, lasting shifts that are taking place just beneath the surface? Now is the moment to question your assumptions, to look beyond the obvious, and to track the new centers of influence, no matter where they may be emerging. The map of power is being redrawn as we speak, and it matters that you know where the boundaries are shifting. Share your thoughts in the comments below. What signals do you see that others might overlook? Your insights could make the difference, helping all of us stay alert and prepared as the world's future is decided in real time. History is written not just by those who hold power, but by those who recognize its movements early. The next chapter is already beginning. Will you be ready to read it and to help write it?